thank you so much for being part of this. We're really honored to have you here and to have you guys engage with us on this conversation as well. So just to kick things off, it's really incredible to have these incredible entrepreneurs that have incredible journeys and phenomenal achievements. And I'd rather not try and summarize it myself, because I'm definitely going to miss some things. So can we please just go around, please introduce yourself. Just a young, quick one.
Hi guys, my name is Mokgadi Mabela. I'm the founder of Native Nosi, which is a beekeeping company specializing in raw honey production and pollination services.
Cool. My name is Nic. I'm an entrepreneur and a keynote speaker.
Afternoon everyone, my name is Vuyi Zondi. I'm the founder of a natural skincare brand that is called Karim Skincare.
Afternoon everybody, my name is Roed. I'm the CEO of Heavy Chef, which is an education platform for entrepreneurs.
Cool. So what we really want to achieve out of this conversation is finding a really good solid ground to understand what's happening in the ecosystem, the sort of environment small businesses are going to have to compete in, right? So just to kick things off, with something that we're all very conscious of, coronavirus. I think it's become very evident that it's affecting big businesses in a really massive way. But Fred, what do you think is going to happen in terms of the small business impact in South Africa?
So I'm not sure it's about what's going to happen, it's already happening. And the fact is, if I look at my week that I've just had now, the beginning of the week I spoke with a prominent entrepreneur in the Heavy Chef community, a guy who runs an education business which relies a lot on students that come from overseas. It's a fast-growing business. It's a startup which is now, I think, in its 5th year. It's in the region of about 200 million rand a year. He was stressed because his revenue is being decimated. On Thursday, I had a tour around Langa with some friends of mine. We went walking around to some of the small businesses there, and you know, they rely largely on people coming into their community, and everybody's scared it's affecting them. That's small businesses. And then, you know, I had a conversation with somebody who is very prominent in the hotel trade, and he was saying to me, all the hotels are now having a conversation about a full lockdown, actually quarantining themselves. So if you think about, you know, everyone from big business all the way down to small business, it's here, it's happening. And the reality is we need to batten down the hatches. In terms of small businesses, we need to understand what it means. We need to take a zoomed out view. We need to ensure that we have cash in our bank balances, and that we're thinking creatively about our next steps.
Cool. Nic, what do you think is the sort of current state of small business in South Africa? What's your assessment of it?
So I'm going to try and not be too negative when I answer this, because it's extremely hard to be an entrepreneur in the climate right now. Let's forget about coronavirus. We have rolling blackouts, we have water shortages, we have an economic downturn, we're in a technical recession, people don't have money. So small businesses need to really assess your cash flow, your expenses, what staff you employ, what products you're pushing out, how much runway you have. All of these things are always important, but today even more so. And I think Fred's right. It's not about what's coming. This climate, my view on South Africa's economy broadly is, for small business, we're in a generational problem. We need to hunker down for the next 20, 30, 40 years. We're not going to fix anything in the next 5 years. So if you're building a business, you need to be smart about where you're spending your money and where you're making your money. Because I promise you now, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Cool. Mokgadi, I know you were about to open your very first retail store, which I think is a massive achievement. Please give her a round of applause. When you think about issues such as, you know, coronavirus or load shedding and things like that, how are you looking to sort of battle those challenges and really solve for them in how you build out your retail space and also how you operate as well?
The rationale behind doing our first store, is because Native Nosi has always been quite abstract. We've been functioning on our online store for the past 3 years, where people from all over South Africa place orders. And wherever you are, you should have your order within 2 to 3 working days. And as a result, people were not able to interact with us or our brand, and we were not also able to extend our service offering to other demands that the market is requesting for, hence the space that we need to do. I don't even know how I feel about it, because when you look at the timelines, we plan to open in May, and with the coronavirus here, and having already signed leases and agreements, and having to pay deposit, investing in shop fittings, and all this, the initial stock that we need for the shop to be operational, coinciding with load shedding, coinciding with coronavirus, and all the other elements that my colleague has just mentioned, it makes it quite an anxious, I'm full of anxiety. But taking in mind the presentation that WalkFresh has just done, we need to find solutions amidst our problems. What we have decided is that we will then maximize on the fact that we already have a channel of delivering without a lot of interaction. But the problems are there. Native Nosi is quite anxious, but the show must go on, because whether coronavirus is here or not, your bills are your bills. Your car is going to get deducted, your debit orders are still going to run through, and we need to find a way in which we'll be able to operate even with the challenges. So I think for now, we're going ahead, we're opening our store. We will just have to be careful with how we spend and keep in mind the current climate in South Africa. And up until then, we still do what we got to do.
Yeah, so this wasn't mentioned, but I work at Yoko, but I have a bunch of businesses outside of that, and you sort of have a similar journey where your business wasn't your main thing until much later on. So you really were working in corporate, and then your business was your side hustle, and then you made your side hustle your main hustle, and then made your corporate consulting your side hustle. What was that transition like, going from side hustle to main business, and like really scaling your business from there?
So I think comes a time when you have to take the jump. So for me, my corporate background was in management consulting and was doing strategy consulting. So I wasn't even working a normal 8-hour day. I was working longer than that. So from a physical perspective, I couldn't keep both happening. And the crossover was happening where Corium needed much more of my attention than what my corporate job was. And I always say to people, before being full-time on Corium, I felt like I was a project coordinator in my own business. So I had to step in and really understand the value chain, understand, from from cradle to grave, what is our value chain journey as Corium? And I wasn't going to be able to fully extrapolate the value of that while still having a full-time job. Did I answer you?
Definitely. So just by the way, you can go onto Slido and submit some questions to our panel. So again, you just go to Slido, so you can Google Slido, and then put in Yoko Exchange as the hashtag, and you can send questions that can be answered by our panel. So every quarter, Yoko does a quarterly survey onto small business sentiment. And similar to the Business Confidence Index, it tracks sentiment across 5,000 small businesses that are surveyed. And respondents, to see how respondents are feeling about their small businesses, right? And we have been tracking this over about 6 months, and the results can be seen on the screen right now. I'm guessing soon. But while you see those, send in those questions. So this is just how small businesses are feeling right now about the businesses that they are running and the things that they are doing, okay? So just to sort of piggyback off of this, Fred, what do you really think about these sort of numbers? And numbers are everything when it comes to business, but what does this really, really mean in a fundamental way? So we measure the small business index in terms from -100 to +100. So -100 being, I really am done with this, I can't do business anymore, to +100, I am the winner in the room, right? But currently it's sitting at around 35, which is the highest reading currently, right? So what do you think? It is significantly higher than big businesses as well. What do you think is the reason why small businesses are much more confident than bigger businesses?
So first of all, for those of you who can't see, the red is way down here and the black dots are way higher, and the black dots indicate the confidence over and above that small business confidence has over big business. And I think, I mean, it's a great question. It's a fascinating question. It's also a very nuanced question. I think that there's incredible amount of facets that you can take into and factors that you can take into that. For example, psychological and socioeconomic and so on and so forth. But I think just if you want to simplify it and really kind of get to the nub of it, I believe that it's similar to what Nic was speaking about earlier in terms of curiosity and entrepreneurs, what drives entrepreneurs. And if you think about that in terms of you guys out there who are entrepreneurial, why do you do what you do, right? If you separate the motives and the aspects that we think about, I mean, you can kind of take broad swaths and say you've got macro environmental factors and you've got micro environmental factors. We're always going to be at the mercy of macro environmental factors. Nic was very correct in saying, you know, we've got more than just coronavirus. You know, over the past couple of years, we've been dealing with things like drought and, you know, we've had load shedding for some time now. We've had water shortages in Cape Town and now in other areas in the country. These are very big risks to business, but these are not unique. Every single business around the world, small businesses, are affected by macro environmental factors. So why do we do it? Why are we the crazy ones, right? And if you ask that question, I think you can boil it down to the fact that we entrepreneurs are obsessed with singular problems. We look at things from a micro environmental perspective. We look at the problem in front of us. Professor Clayton Christensen, for those of you who know him, he mentioned the term jobs to be done. We look at the job to be done in front of us. And we get this kind, I mean, I'm sure many of you know this. When you're in the zone, you're doing that thing that you're absolutely passionate about. And you're not worried about, I mean, you are worried to an extent about the macro environmental factors, but when you're in the zone, you're not. And that's the thing that drives us. When we get up in the morning, we're not thinking about load shedding or water shortages or economic downturns 2 years down the line. The truth is, we're thinking about that job. We're driven by that problem to be solved. And that, I think, is a hard thing. And that's why you'll always see those black dots over those red dots.
Cool. So we're going to go to one of the questions. So this is to any of you that feels very strongly on it. Thoughts on bootstrapping versus taking funding in the current South African economic climate?
Okay, let me take that. So for me, you take funding when you need funding because that becomes a debt obligation. So for as long as you can bootstrap your business and you're able to pay your employees you know, a competitive market salary, I'd say bootstrap it. But obviously with the expansion curve or the growth curve, there is going to be a time where you need to have massive capital outlay. So I always say, don't fund right from the start, unless if you do have that big contract or you know that someone is going to be taking up those volumes. Rather bootstrap, build the brand, build the business, and once it starts taking off on that S-curve, you know, and there's demand, and there's volume demand, and there's contracts, then you have something to go and say, I'm asking for 10 Rand. But on the back of that 10 Rand, here's the purchase order. Because I think one of the worst things would be to start off with this debt obligation, and you feel like you're running a race where you need to catch up with something, and you haven't given yourself a fair chance to lay a foundation.
Cool.
I want to chime in on that one. I think, so I've done both. I've raised tons of VC and I've bootstrapped. And I think the problem that most of us have is we're in a climate now where it's cool to raise funding. Everyone wants to raise funding because it's the thing that you should do. But the problem is none of us understand what kind of business we are. So before you think about raising funding, bootstrapping or whatever, think about what you want out of your business. Do you want to make 10,000 Rand a month net profit that you can put into your back pocket and pay your bond off? Cool, don't raise funding. Funding is the start of debt. Funding is the start of pressure. Funding changes your business fundamentally. You get rid of ownership of your choices. If all you want is a lifestyle business, do not raise funding ever. If you want a global brand, fine, raise funding. Whenever you can. I've gotten great advice from investors and entrepreneurs around the world. When there's money to be raised, raise it. And I think you said the same thing. That's key. If someone wants to give you money, take it. Make sure the terms are good and go for it. But just know what you want out of your business. Don't fall into a fundraise because you think it's what everyone else is doing. You're dead in the water then.
Cool. Cool. So just one more question. Fred, you handsome son of a gun. If
have
you
a
could
feeling I
change
know
one
who
thing
that
to
is.
make it easier to start a business in South Africa, what would it be?
Look, for those of you who are familiar with the African policies around our beautiful continent, you'll know that there's been a few countries now that have been experimenting with the Startup Act, and essentially it's just red tape removal. So if you can get rid of all the red tape, I speak to my brothers and sisters across all different socioeconomic sectors within our constituency at Heavy Chef, and let me tell you, the fact is we have enough raw talent and tenacity and skill in this country to be able to succeed and innovate our way out of an economic downturn. The problem is we're not making it easy for ourselves, and we can. It's been proven, there's precedent for it. If you look at Tunisia a few months ago, they signed the Startup Act. I think it was in Senegal, some of you may know, that did it a few months before that. This is happening across the world. It's happening in progressive countries, and we need to do it here, now.
So just a final question. Mokgadi, I think this really relates to you. So we did a campaign called Just Start last year, which was really about encouraging entrepreneurs and small businesses to really get out of their heads and just really get to the doing part, right? And what do you think of the statement, if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late? I know you really started with an iterative process to get to the thing that is so amazing now, but what was that like, and what do you think of that sentiment?
I don't resonate with that sentiment.
Okay.
I don't resonate with it simply because I believe that, you know, we spend so much time defining and laying structures and setting terms and conditions instead of actually just doing something and letting the journey dictate what is it that you're supposed to do and what it is that you're not supposed to do. And it's statements like these that put people under necessary pressure. Let your journey lead you to where you're supposed to go. And if you start with a version that's not so appealing, that's your journey, perfect it, be better at what you're doing. And if you are fortunate enough to be like my colleague who has went on a long, a semi-long journey before they actually launched because they realized that the business needs them much more than what they were doing outside of the business, then that is your journey. And success is determined by the individual and their specific journey. So I think your journey should determine your outcome, not necessarily quotes or structures or things that may not be applicable to you. So that doesn't resonate with me at all.
Cool. So just to bring everything home, what is one thing you would tell someone about running, growing, or starting a business that has never done it before?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I was about to
Okay,
say.
so someone has never started a business.
Okay.
They've never run it, they've never grown it.
I see.
What would you tell that person if they really wanted to get into it? Okay.
You have the opportunity to do the template. I used to always second guess myself and the industry that I'm in because obviously the profile of a beekeeper is not me, you know, and I always used to think of it as a disadvantage. But I realized that a lot of people come to me for advice of different stages of the beekeeping cycle, whether it's the actual farming, whether it's the retail that I've been doing, and whether it's the byproduct or the training opportunities, because I am the only one who's doing it, so I'm the first point of reference. And I realized that instead of me being who I am in the industry and looking at it as a disadvantage, maybe there are bigger opportunities that I can exploit to further my business and make sure that my turnover is slightly more each year, so it doesn't have to be a curse. You can actually just use it to your advantage and smash stereotypes and do the template that has not been done before.
Cool.
So I'm going to be a little bit more cautious here. Building businesses is not for everyone. Mm-hmm. This is really hard. It's a lifelong commitment. I've been doing it since I was 16. It's all I know. If you are struggling to do this, then maybe you should just get a job, because this is hard. You give your life to this endeavor. I was born this way. This is what I've only known how to do. So if you're on the fence and you want a lot of leave and a big salary, don't start a business. Go get a job.
So off the back of what he said, that's very true. Entrepreneurship is not glamorous. So we do these panels and we do PR opportunities. That's probably 1 to 2% of what happens. It's not nice, it's not pretty, it's not glamorous, it's emotionally frustrating. So you need to understand your why. Why are you doing it? You know, and you also need to understand your customer. What is the problem that you're solving for your customer? Because if you fail to build a customer-centric business model, you'll find that you're very passionate, you're very able, but no one is buying your products. So for me, the thing I always say is that find the pain point of your customer within your passion. You know, hone it down and serve your customer, because a lot of us get lost in the whole passion, drive, and we forget that there's a customer that needs to be served. We need to be at the right price point for the customer. We need to be accessible for where our customer goes to shop for us, and we need to be visible and market ourselves so the customer knows that we exist.
So from my side, just building upon what colleagues here have said, which I agree with and concur with. I think, you know, I used to run an agency and it grew quite big. There were a lot of people within my agency who were wanting to start agencies of their own. Each and every single time I said to them, don't, because it's so flippin' hard. And I told them that 5 or 6 times, and they still wanted to do it, then they're supposed to do it. And I think the same applies for entrepreneurship. You tell somebody don't do it, it's really hard, and they still do it, and then they're supposed to do it. They've got something inside of them. But I think furthermore, I believe that personally, I think you need to be doing what you're good at, and delegate the rest. So in the day-to-day tasks of what you do, you need to be doing that which you're supposed to be doing. If you're doing stuff that you're not good at, you're doing business a disservice, you're doing your colleagues a disservice, and it's so often the trap of so many of again, the people that I speak with on a day-to-day basis, they're doing stuff that they just shouldn't be doing. Find somebody else to do it. No matter how you do it, find somebody else. Do your books, do your law agreements, do all the stuff that you're not supposed to be doing. Or, you know, do the books if you're good at it. But do what you're good at and delegate the rest.
I just need an indication. Are we running over time? Because I could do this the whole day.
We can continue.
We're all good? Okay, we're going to go with the questions again. Okay. Oh, this is beautiful. How can you find your passion and make it a business? I know you said something about being not the best thing to focus on, but really merging it with some business models, fundamentals around that.
Okay, so let me backtrack a bit. So passion is very important because it's probably going to make you jump out of bed in the morning. But you need to understand a business model. And so we go back to the principles of design thinking that say that at the center of a business is your customer. You need to empathize with your customer and understand how your business fits into the customer. I can be passionate all I want about neon paint. I can think it's beautiful, but if there's no market for that, if I'm in a conservative country where people like their neutral, that business is not going to take off. So you need to find a way to balance the practicalities with the hard stuff. It can't all be hard, and it can't all be hate. And I think that's very important.
I have a very straight answer for this. You should be passionate about the work you do. You should not work on your passion. Unequivocally, if you like ballroom dancing and you want to then go and start a ballroom dancing studio, that will kill your love for ballroom dancing. Hands down, every time I see it, you should love what you do and you should be passionate about it, but your passion should feed you becoming an expert generalist. They should feed your curiosity about everything else you do. I promise you now, if you turn something you're passionate about, like painting, into a business, you will hate painting within 10 years of it not paying you a living.
So I'm passionate about vegetable gardens. I'm passionate about music. I'm not turning that into. Do not want to hear me sing. Trust me. So if I try, I'm going to fail. But I have a view on this. I think that because people talk so much about passion in business, and I think that it's a big red herring. I think it's more about values. What do you value? And I agree with what Nic was saying about being passionate about that which you work on. But it's really at the heart of it. It's about what you value. And I think that will have far more sustainability over the long term.
Earlier on today, we actually had a session in the ideas track around marketing for small businesses. And there's a question there around how do you navigate different generations? So how do you sell to Gen Z versus millennials versus the older generation? Do you guys think about those things? Is it not something you focus on?
I personally don't think you should be selling across generations. Pick an audience, build something small, build something big. If you start trying to sell to everyone who's your customer, like you guys know that more intimately. You're building very niche businesses to a niche that is actually quite big. And I mean, I'm sure you can talk more broadly to this.
So with Native North, we've got two very different clients. We've got your traditional clients which want to use our products for medicinal purposes. So even if they are not the upper class, but say it's a pensioner who values what honey does for them, for their arthritis, even if honey is an expensive product, they see it as an investment for their health, for example. And then we've got the urban upper class market, which actually can afford honey as opposed to sugar. So those are where our market is. Our third market is the young generation which want to support small businesses, which see value in supporting black rising businesses. So those are our three markets. And I always tell people that my business did not start traditionally. I didn't wake up with a passion for beekeeping and decide I'm going to conquer the world and make honey for everybody to be sweet. It was never my intention. My intention was just to sell honey and make it accessible because people thought that our honey or my father's honey rather was a superior product than what was offered commercially. And that's my business journey. And through selling honey, it was snowballing. People were demanding more of it because it is actually a good product because we do nothing to it, whereas the commercial market is selling irradiated or maybe a compromised honey product. So from there, that's where I got into the opportunities that came because I realized that more and more people are demanding what we are doing. Hence, I then decided to go into it. But passion had nothing to do with me wanting to continue to grow the business that I've grown.
So we have a question around what do the jobs of the future look like? So you guys are building really amazing companies right now, but for the future. And what do you look for in the people that you hire, and how do you design those jobs around what's really needed for navigating the future? Everyone just looked at you.
I mean, the question is, do you agree with the belief that jobs will need in the future nothing like the jobs we have today? Yes, I do. I mean, I think the jobs are going to be completely different. And I think there's precedent for that. We've seen it over time. There are certain professions like lawyers, doctors, accountants, salespeople, there will always be a need for. But I do think that we're going to have very, very different skill sets in terms of when I was studying, and I started my agency, we had several jobs that emerged in the first 3 years. Search engine optimization specialist, social media practitioner. We had all these different roles that all of a sudden just popped up. We had to make them. We had to write the job description from the start. So I think what we need to answer your question is we need to be looking for the right type of character. Those people who are curious, that have tenacity, and that have the grit and the gumption to be able to problem solve, to get through the stumbling blocks in front of us.
I think for me, on that point, the key is not what jobs will exist, but how we equip to deal with whatever's coming. So I spoke about it in my talk. The ability to be a lifelong learner is more important to me than hiring an accountant. Honestly, zero makes accounting completely brainless for me. I don't have an accountant in my business, but I have the ability to learn how zero works. If you are a complete Luddite and you're scared of technology and you're scared of everything coming at you, then you should be worried about what jobs will exist in 10 years because you're in trouble. But if you know how to learn, then anything is possible.
So straight after this session, I'm actually going to be facilitating a session in the ideas. And the chosen subject, which I think a lot of small business struggle is how to grow your team. What have you guys found to be the sort of stumbling block for small businesses to recruit? Or is it really a market problem?
So you know what? To add an additional head, I mean, it's a strain on the revenue because the business is money coming in and money coming out. So one of the highest costs is obviously our salaries and wages. So the business really needs to need that head for it to happen. So in terms of my background, my belief is that if it's not a core function, I don't need to do it. And so that may be contradictory to a lot of what we hear that says that small business is going to be the driver of employment in the future. And that's not across all sectors. It's not true for all. And it's a very dangerous rhetoric actually to be saying that. So I think it's difficult. It depends on the model. For a manufacturing model, it's very easy to grow the team. For a more I don't know, millennial, innovative business, it's difficult. Because you just it's not the traditional model that we used to seeing and people talking about.
It is one of my least favorite words is headcount. I hate headcount as a metric for anything. Just because you have lots of people doesn't mean they're efficient. Doesn't mean they're good at their jobs. It means you're trying to show people that you've got a big business. And in the agency and tech space, it's all the talk. Oh, what's your headcount like? For me, as someone who's built lots of headcount, the smaller my headcount, the happier I am as a human. So I want to hire slowly and carefully and pick the best people who will stick with me for a long time and who can do as much as I can. Because the more people you have, the more pain you have, unequivocally every time. And I mean, Fred, you've had a big business, you know.
Yeah, it's tough. I agree with that. And I think if we look at the way we're automating certain tasks and roles and the way we're looking at data, analyzing that data, applying it in a practical way to so many areas within business, you need to have the people that are leaning into the understanding of those metrics, to understand the outcomes that are being achieved and looked for. And again, it speaks to more kind of global skills as opposed to those T-shaped skills.
Cool. So I'd just like to thank you guys for really being open, honest, and authentic in telling your story, everything that you've experienced. So these guys will be around to chat to you. If you'd really like to engage, ask some questions and find out a lot more about the businesses that they run and the things that they're doing. I think they'll be around to be able to do that. I think we should.
Thank you.
Our honey's at the back.
Oh yes, sorry.
Nice.
Quick little plug. So Mokgadi has a store just in the section down there with the merchants. You can have some of her honey also. This amazing sweater is a Yoko original. So we have a store at the back with our swag, where you can really buy really interesting products that Yoko has made with our internal team. Thank you guys so much for the questions, for engaging, and for being here so much. Thank you so much.